All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Urman, co-founder of Funderbeam. What a lovely venue, huh? And superb weather. Really enjoyable events. So I'll talk today very briefly about first about what we do at Funderbeam, where we think that the world will go, and also what is kind of our vision and or our approach to early stage investments. So what is it what we do? And we really like to describe ourselves through a simple metaphor where you would imagine where Bloomberg, AngelList, and Nasdaq, if those three would have a baby. So what does it really mean? So it's three parts that we think that is really necessary for a successful early stage funding, and that is data, primary markets, and thirdly, secondary markets. So yeah, PDF is slightly skewed here, but all right. Anyhow, so what do we do with the data is that we collect the data. We think that it's very, very important to bring transparency to the ecosystem, and that's how we started. So about a year and a half ago, we launched our data products. Actually, that was now more than almost 2 years ago. And we started with a very simple approach. Okay, let's take a couple of hundred companies. Let's try to make the data visible and readable so that everyone really would understand it. And we thought that it shouldn't be so that the data only belongs to a very few. As of today, we have approximately 150,000 company profiles in our database. By the way, it's for free, so everyone can access it. You're either a startup founder, prospective founder, you are an investor, or you maybe want to write an article or blog, then this is all available. And we really think that bringing that kind of democracy, if you like, to the sector is really, really important. So that is the first part. But there's a very, very fundamental problem, what we saw when we started Funderbeam, and that is that we felt that investors do find very difficult to find proper investee companies, and also how do you make a cross-border investment. So historically, it has been quite easy to go and listen to a startup and maybe invest in a startup. Let's say if you are a Latvian investor, you can invest easily in Latvian company. But what if you want to invest in Lithuanian company, or what if you want to invest in Estonian company, or maybe in South America? Then that is the problem. So at the same time, we also saw that entrepreneurs, they really struggle to kind of approach and reach out to the investors. And again, there are multiple investors who probably would invest in your company, but they never heard of you. So where we are at the moment, and actually I'll very briefly touch upon this as well. So this is the current market size, and really it's not small, and it is growing fundamentally. And if we talk about small, medium-sized enterprises, then we're talking about times bigger numbers here. So this is our vision, really, to create a world where all companies, particularly growth companies, can really access funding, and investors at the same time can actually invest in those companies. So really connecting like-minded investors across the globe and making the early stage investments as easy as possible. So before going further, I just want to really kind of give you the summary of where we are at the moment with the startup investments. So this is basically the same thing that you saw a couple of slides back. And really, 2016 wasn't that great for the early stage investments. And you see that it has been falling quite a lot, and this is actually a continuing trend. And that's how the sums were divided between the markets. So the US is, or North America in general is still by far the biggest. Europe and Asia are second spot. But they all have been decreasing quite a lot. So this is total rounds by region. Again, you see that also the rounds itself have decreased a lot. Now, what is very interesting, I think, is that the average deal size at the same time has actually increased. So what does it mean, really? It looks like that investors are willing to invest in those companies which already have proven track record, have already a product in place, have probably also generated some revenue. So they want to take a little bit less risk than they used to. And this is pretty much the cycle we've seen all over the history. And again, what does it mean for the young entrepreneur is that you really need to think, okay, before actually going to get funding, is that an idea that I can actually make work myself? Initially, maybe along with the friends and family. So, where do we go from here? The way we see that, and we have a T-shirt which says that IPOs are so 2015. What does it really mean then? That we believe that instead of having this one single IPO or successful campaign, companies actually can raise multiple times in smaller amounts, but it does give that kind of validation that investors need, particularly in early stage companies. So as a company, that means that maybe you will not fundraise too big amount with one go, but as you go along, you are able to convince your investors that, okay, this is what we're going to do. And once you kind of reach that moment where you need the second funding round, you can actually show the investors back, okay, this is what we promised and this is what we did. Surely enough, you're not always able to deliver everything that you said. But again, I think that is also very much something that founders need to be aware of, that what is your promise to the investors? And the same applies to both in startups and in more mature stage investments. So data, I think, is extremely important, and also in the future even more. I'm sure you've heard about ICOs, so initial coin offerings, and what I see there at the moment is really missing is the data part. Who's actually validating the deal for you? So the way we kind of think that the early stage investment should be built is that you need to also have the information which enables you to do the due diligence, both post-investment, first prior to investment, and then later on the post-investment. So that means that you're constantly actually getting validated information. And that is where Funderbeam really tries to kind of step in and says, okay, this is what we do. We're not going to give you just information about that particular company who's fundraising, but what about competitive landscape? What about the different regions as well? So you actually, as an investor, you can compare these things and you make your own decision. And this is what we think that is really, really important. And also creating a really standardized reporting. And clearly enough, we need to be extremely mindful here, because you don't want to create a burden for a startup or for a young company, which kind of buries them to the administrative work, and they need to kind of put a lot of or too much effort on creating reports. But if you standardize that and you come up with a solution which kind of gives them the possibility to disclose about their progress, about their updates, then definitely I think that is kind of something that is promoting also investors' willingness to invest and take a risk in the companies. So data remains extremely important, but data is also one of the trickiest, definitely what we've seen. So quantity is not an issue, as we say, but the quality definitely is. Interestingly enough, when we started and when we launched our primary markets a year ago, then we first launched with 3 Estonian companies, and the average ticket size was very, very small. So all the companies, they fundraised between 140 and 170,000 euros. The average investment was around 300 euros. Today, a year later, we are able to already fund companies which want to fundraise, let's say, 500,000, 600, 700, and we also believe that already very near future we can also accommodate a request to raise at least 1 million euros. So what it really means is that we grow along with our companies and along with our investors. And the ticket size, as of today already, an average is, I would say, around 700 euros. So I believe also this is going to be the trend in the future. And also, there is a very interesting mix what's going to happen, not immediately, but in the future, where the crowd, the angel investors, and eventually the institutional investors will actually mix. And why? Because of technology. I like to give an example that because of the technology, it should be as easy to raise $1 billion from 1 million investors as it is today to raise, let's say, $10,000 from 10 investors. Because technology really is there, and ICOs, I think, are kind of showing that you can do that quite easily. Now the question is like, if you can actually put the right pieces together. So liquidity remains extremely important, and this is one of the key, I would say, differentiators of what we do as well. And those who have been following the crowdfunding scene have heard that lately the big ones, the big boys who've been there quite a few years now, already launching or thinking about launching their own secondary market as well. And this is very, I think, important both for the early stage investors and those who come in later. And why? Because this really creates the necessary circulation and velocity of money, if you like. And this is the way it works also today. It's just much more cumbersome, where the later the stage of the fundraising, then the bigger the investors coming in. And usually what they want to do is to kind of cleaning up the cap table. And this is exactly what every efficient secondary market enables you to do if you want. Or if you are a founder who wants to remain in control, you can do that as well. But this is definitely a trend where liquidity creates velocity of money. Now, we often kind of try to not compare ourselves with crowdfunding sites, although we do have a crowdfunding functionality. But what we think about Funderbeam and about the way the SMEs or growth companies should be funded is much more than just crowdfunding. So with our technology that we created, we actually enable investors to either launch a campaign and invite people publicly. So that is kind of like crowdfunding is. Or you can come in and actually create your own private, by invitation only, syndicate. What it means that, let's say if you are an angel investor and you have 5, 6 other investors you want to invest in company X, then you can come to us and create that syndicate, which will remain private. And why would you do that? Again, for the same reason that I just described on the previous slide, is the liquidity. So you can maybe a year later, 2 years later, if the company has been doing really well, open up the syndicate for the public, or you can still keep that within the syndicate, and maybe 6 months, 8 months later, after the initial investment, someone has changed their mind in the initial syndicate members. So it's very easy, and it doesn't really mean or matter where from where the investor is coming from, because with our solution, it's super simple. And I think that is exactly what the future brings, that you can really transact cross-border and without much, I would say, bureaucracy, if you like. Another trend we like to facilitate or create is that we would like to see those companies who have, let's say, 200-300 employees, and maybe have been kind enough to share the stocks to their employees, either through employees' stock option scheme or similar motivation program. So one of the kind of major issues today is, again, those employees who have the stocks, actually they can't really take advantage of those, so they can't really use it. So there is no liquidity again. So how can you actually cash out if you need? So we believe that the companies will actually start listing or using the mechanism where they can allow trading just within the company, within the employees or current stockholders. And later on, if they want, they can obviously open up that for the public as well. So this is what I see as one of the biggest trends as well, and I believe that this will definitely happen very, very soon. Now, all that basically brings us to the one of the final slides. Actually, this is the final slide. Is that what is really the past and what is the future? And sorry again about this little bit mess up here, because the PDF and keynote do not really match very well each other. Anyhow, so this is how we see things and future evolve. So I don't want to kind of keep talking too much, and happy to answer any questions if you have. Also, feel free to contact me directly or write us. Have a look on our reports. The data I described today was from our annual report, and as I said, this is all for free. Feel free to use it, share it, and take advantage of it. All right, thank you.